has not applied for that, and he lives here. He runs a pretty significant business here. Their 3 small children are here with them, and so it's a very important decision that many of us face, frankly. But he has not applied for anything formally, and I just think many of these press reports are false and inaccurate. And I would just call on everybody to just give us a little bit of time to form our federal government, get those appointments in place.
This is America Talks Live Hour 2, where our most important programming content comes from you. Your questions, comments, and observations phoned into us at 1-877-639-7629. That's 1-877-NEWSMAX. Now, you and I just saw Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway discounting the latest media buzz surrounding the Trump transition. Reports that Mr. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, could play a prominent role at the White House beginning next January 20th. Speaking of beginnings, let's start right now. Miranda Kahn has this news update. Miranda?
Thanks, JD. James Clapper, the director of national intelligence under President Obama, has resigned.
I submitted my letter of resignation last night, which felt pretty good. I got 64 days left, and I think I'd have a hard time with my wife, anything past that.
Clapper was the director of national intelligence under President Obama since 2010, and they will leave the office at the same time. Now to the upcoming administration. As Donald Trump continues to deliberate over who will be in his cabinet, Texas Senator Ted Cruz thinks the media wants him to fail.
Nobody should be surprised that there are media critics who are trying to throw rocks at the president-elect and at the transition team, that they don't want the president to succeed.
Bloomberg reports that Cruz is a possible candidate to be Trump's attorney general. And the president-elect's favorability has gone up since the election. According to the latest Gallup poll, Trump's favorability was 34% before the election. And take a look. Now it's 42%. For much more on these stories, please visit Newsmax.com. I'm Miranda Kahn. Back to you, JD.
Thank you very much, Miranda. Our findings are that was a very favorable news update. A whole lot going on. Some things favorable, some things not so favorable. It's the Trump transition. Let's talk about it with our guests. Joining me right here at the anchor desk, Nancy Brinker, the host of Conversations with Nancy Brinker that you see right here on Newsmax TV. Now, just to display Nancy's talents, before taking on the Newsmax TV hosting duties, she served as our ambassador to the Republic of Hungary and also the U.S. Chief of Protocol, so I'm trying to mind my P's and Q's. No elbows on the anchor desk. Meantime, from Newsmax Washington, another of my old pals, longtime conservative activist, former president of the NRA, and now the opinion editor of the Washington Times, the one and only David Keene. David, we're very keen on seeing you. Welcome to our program today.
Always a pleasure, JD.
All righty, gang, let's get started. It's as if the New York Times, the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, Time Magazine, and Newsweek, whatever form it comes in these days, not to mention the alphabet networks, they are all incensed with this transition. As I opined last night, you know, Nancy, by their lights, there should be a complete cabinet in place. There should be a new Supreme Court justice. Everything should be done in just a couple of days.
Well, there would be if they'd won, because that's the way they did think. They had everybody lined up and entitled and whatever. And I think people were very surprised when they saw that Donald Trump is going to be the kind of president who responds to the need in this country for change. And that means complete change and looking at people very differently. And it's very exciting. I mean, he's got all kinds of ideas. There are all kinds of people going in and out of the transition office. Let's just see what happens. But I think Kellyanne is really right. You have to give this administration a chance to set up their team. And that means you got to talk to a lot of people. And a lot of people may not be able to make the commitment, or they want to help in some way and maybe not another. I think that it's amazing that so many people have responded. I think it's just great. And a great opportunity to serve our country. And
speaking of opportunities to serve, David Keene, the latest buzz has to do with Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law, having some sort of job in the Trump White House. Is that really such a huge deal, the way the corporate media is playing it, as if there's something wrong with the whole notion?
No, this is the silly season. There's not much else going on. And so instead of just letting everybody sit back and letting interview people and come up with the best people to fill the various jobs they're trying to find, they were upset the other day because he went to dinner without taking the press with him. You know, I mean, this is not, none of this is.
Do we still have David? Looks like we might. Well, we'll try to restore that contact. Our technicians working feverishly. So right now it's just Nancy and me against the world. Okay, as David was pointing out, you know, and I think back, I'm of a certain age. I can remember even in that tough Nixon-Humphrey race in '68. By early '69, there was one big night where Nixon brought everybody out in the cabinet, introduced them all, and that was fine, even for a press corps so hostile to Dick Nixon.
Right.
But these guys now, there is nothing that assuages their disappointment that their favorite gal, Hillary, didn't become president.
No, and there's never really even, it's just always a feeling that whoever the person is inexperienced, doesn't know anything, isn't connected, doesn't know this, doesn't know that. It's never, gee, that's innovative or interesting, or give the people a chance. And also, but I do think at the same time, I hope the administration will reach out and pull in people, even who are some of their adversaries, because there's an awful lot of good people.
You know, it's funny you should mention that, Nancy, because one such person within the Republican family is South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley.
Right.
Now, today the buzz is, you know, yesterday Trump was anti-woman and whatever. Right. Here's Governor Haley showing up at Trump Tower, and all the buzz is about Secretary of State. Do you put much credence in the South Carolina governor taking over the State Department?
You know, she's young. She's had experience being CEO of an important state. I do think it will be helpful for her to have a lot of if she were to get this job, a lot of really excellent advisors so she could ramp up quickly, but also take it on as any good public servant would. You know, analyze the information. She's got a strong team around the president, and get her own strong team.
And there we see pictures of Nikki Haley. And, you know, the hardest working person in the Trump transition, or the most visible, is the aforementioned Kellyanne Conway. Right. Kellyanne, not only on ABC's Good Morning America, she went over to West 54th Street, got on with CBS this morning, and offered her thoughts on Governor Haley stopping by to talk about a possible position in the Trump administration.
Well, we have long short lists at Trump Tower in terms of transition. I think some people are expected on those lists, Nora, and some people would surprise you, would be unexpected. But this is what President-elect Trump is doing every day, meeting with advisors, having interviews with potential candidates for each of these positions.
And so the transition continues, and look who's back. It's our pal David Keene. David, somebody pulled the plug. But we're glad to have you back, brother, because we know you're alive and well. And if you should be called upon by the Trump transition team, what advice would you be giving them right now?
They ought to make John Bolton Secretary of State.
That's the best thing they could do, huh, in terms of continuity, in terms of knowledge of the job. I'm just wondering, while we're on the subject of Secretary of State and all the talk about Nikki Haley, Rudy the other day, I guess it was a Wall Street Journal symposium. Nancy, as a former ambassador and chief of protocol, I mean, we all love Rudy. Was he a little bit too flippant about the possibility of becoming Secretary of State? Did he hurt his chances, in other words?
Well, I think he clearly wants to serve, and I think that he's probably been through his own experience, puts it right out there. I do think, though, I have an opinion about this, and I think that someone who's going to be Secretary of State should have, at some point in their lives, either lived, worked, studied, or served somewhere over their lifetime out of the United States, because it is amazing what you see, the lens that you have when you see your country through another lens. And it really helps you inform your decisions a lot. And I do think there's a part of that. And then also, maybe at foreign policy, some part of your education was in foreign policy, or that you had a chance to participate.
So as I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking back to a cool trip that David and I took this summer with Freedom Alliance up the Danube. So Nancy, you were there in Budapest at that remarkable capital for the Republic of Hungary. I guess the message is, psst, Mr. Trump, Nancy wouldn't mind the gig as Secretary of State. But David, and of course Nancy has a lot of qualifications. You know, David, I just thought Rudy was a natural fit for AG, but there are a lot of good lawyers who could take that gig. Jeff Sessions, Ted Cruz, you know, and guys we probably haven't. Oh, my favorite.
And JD, if I can say something, domestically, nothing is more important in this administration than the Justice Department, because what we have lost under President Obama is any semblance of the rule of law. The Justice Department has been so corrupted and so misused that somebody has to go in there and not only straighten it out, but convince the American people that we are a nation that observes the rule of law.
I agree with that.
And I'm going to go
agree with that.
publicly. I've got my candidate. He's been mentioned a little bit. And
who
I don't.
is that?
The greatest guy coming down the pike, Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, who worked on the immigration issues for Attorney General Ashcroft, who ran for Congress. Good guy, guts up guy. Would send a clear signal on immigration and national security, and plus, with his experience in the Justice Department under a non-politicized DOJ, he could go back in there. Young, energetic, from the heartland, guts up on the border. That's my guy. David, do you have a favorite for AG?
There are a lot of good people. I was with John Ashcroft 3 nights ago. He was playing the piano, and he looks great. And he is in touch both with Jeff Sessions and with the Trump transition. So there's a man who can give you some really good advice, and I suspect that he is.
All right, so Nancy, you basically put your resume out for Secretary of State a couple of minutes ago. So I'm so in addition to that gig, by the way, I'm happy here, but if you want to send me to Australia to bone up on my visit there in Congress, down under, I'm happy to take that. But all kidding aside, Attorney General, an important job. Anybody you would like to see there, or a couple of people who really make the list?
I actually thought Rudy would be a great choice there too, because I thought that he's lived that life in a way, and he has that, how shall I say it, that sort of impression.
That je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And in people's minds, from being the mayor, he has a lot of visuals about who he is, which is how people sort of characterize you today.
Yeah.
In the things that he's done and the range of interests he's had, and in the largest city in our country.
Well, I just hope I didn't give Chris Kobach the proverbial kiss of death by offering him, saying that's the guy for the gig.
And what about Ted Cruz?
Well, that's something we're going to talk about next with your calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. David Keene's going to stay right where he is at Newsmax, Washington. Nancy Brinker gets hardship pay because she's got to sit next to me. But we're so glad you're watching us. Remember, your calls, we're counting on them at 1-877-NEWSMAX as we continue our discussion here. It's America Talks Live. Stay with us.